Good afternoon, everybody. Why don't we take a moment and stand and stretch? On behalf of Capital Community Church, we want to take a moment and welcome all of you here this afternoon for this memorial service. And it's our true privilege to have everybody in attendance. And many of us have come from many different places. And we've come from different areas of the city, maybe even from the province, maybe even from our nation. But it is our true honor to have all of you with us today. Why don't you take a moment and shake hands with someone nearby? And then you may be seated. I'm going to turn this podium to Carrie Grobe.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carrie Grobe, and I am the Master of Ceremonies for today's Holocaust Memorial service. Thank you all for coming, and I think we'll start off with an introduction of songs by Rabbi Yosef Goldman. Rabbi?
The past few years, we've experienced this amazing occasion with song. It was not my tradition growing up to sing at the Holocaust commemoration service, except for Ani Ma'amin, which is, in fact, the last song that we're going to talk about today. Ani Ma'amin basically says, I believe with complete faith in the coming of the Messiah. And even if he delays, I shall still expect him and pray for his speedily coming, because I believe that Hashem, our God, will bring him when it is time. The first song that we're going to sing today is Hine ma tov u'ma na'im shevet achim gam yachad. Behold, how beautiful it is that brothers and sisters, different communities, people who might consider themselves very different from each other, come together and sit together and sing together and pray together, because that is the most beautiful thing, and that is why God created humanity. Because we are a social animal, and we're not even an animal, but that's the scientific term. These past 6 weeks, there have been people in the world who have tried to say, no, you're not brothers and sisters. You can't be together. You can't celebrate together. You can't pray together. You can't even look at each other without resentments and fear and all kinds of other negative, very negative feelings. King David in his wisdom in Psalms says, Hine ma tov u'ma na'im. Behold, it is beautiful and pleasant and wonderful for people from different walks of life to be together, to sit together, to eat together, to pray together, and to do things together. I asked Pastor Jack last night if I can talk about the hate crimes, and I really don't want to talk about hate crimes specifically. But there are people, like I said, who try to say, don't associate with Muhammad al-Qasimi. Don't associate with Raymond Woodward. Don't associate with Will Vanden Hoonard. Don't associate with Tony Fitzgerald. Don't associate with Leanne Fitch. Don't associate with many, many hundreds of people. I think it may be already thousands, but many hundreds of people in Fredericton that I have come to know in the last 10 years. And all those people that I just mentioned are truly dear friends of mine. In our prayer for the sick, every Shabbat we say close to 300 names. And every Shabbat apologize to my community. Sorry, I just got another 2 names to pray for. And last week we lost somebody that we were praying for such a long time. But on Friday afternoon, we got a request from a young 11-year-old girl in Ireland who has a brain tumor and is now in a coma. And Friday night, a brand new granddaughter of somebody who is Catholic, but he's been attending our services for the last 4 years, told us that her granddaughter was born with a heart murmur and she is in serious danger to her life. So just very quickly, Pittsburgh, Christchurch, New Zealand, Notre Dame Cathedral, Nairobi, Kenya, Sri Lanka, and last but not least, Poway, California. We are here to say we are not afraid. We are here to say we are united. We are here to say that we want to be with each other and celebrate with each other, and we will never let these people scare us again.
The Holocaust was the Nazis' attempt to murder the Jewish people, first in Europe and ultimately everywhere in the world if they could, based on their racist anti-Semitic ideology which saw the Jews as an ultimate evil. The project the Nazis undertook regarding the Jews began in 1933 in their search for a solution to the problem that they saw regarding the Jews and progressed through various stages and developments right until the end of World War II in 1945. 1933 was a critical turning point in history and in the history of the story of the Holocaust. The Nazis came to power via democratic means and then proceeded to use the machinery of democracy to dismantle democracy and ultimately to pursue those whom they defined as their archenemy and the ultimate evil, and those were the Jewish people. At the time the Nazis came to power, there were approximately 16 to 17 million Jews in the world, of whom there were about 9 million in Europe at the time, and in Germany itself, approximately 500,000 or slightly more than that. The Nazis began their pursuit of the Jews and looking for a solution to their problem with the Jews, what they called the Jewish question, from the moment they came to power in 1933. They looked for ways to separate the Jews from German society, in the economy, in politics, in civil society, in culture, and in everything. They boycotted the Jews, passed laws against the Jews, disenfranchised the Jews, kicked the Jews out of citizenship, and tried to force the Jews to emigrate from the Third Reich as a way of relieving Germany of this threat that the Nazis imagined. The climax of all that, of the Nazi treatment of the Jews, came in November 1938 with the violent, nationally organized Kristallnacht pogrom, in which thousands of Jewish stores were destroyed, homes were destroyed, more than 1,500 synagogues were burned to the ground, more than 100 Jews were murdered, 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and taken to concentration camps and to prisons. And this pressure on the Jews to leave, to be separated from society, continued and pushed the Jews indeed. Many were leaving as time went on, looking for places to go. In the course of the pre-war years, 1933 to September 1939, approximately half of the German Jews actually left Germany. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland, and that brought the beginning of World War II. And with the invasion of Poland, they suddenly had in their hands an additional nearly 2 million Jews. Months after that, they invaded Scandinavia and conquered Norway and Denmark, and then Western Europe, and conquered Holland and Belgium and Luxembourg and France. And with all of these conquests, by the summer of 1940, Germany found itself now not with a problem of a few 100,000 Jews inside the Third Reich, but with a problem of several million Jews across territories they had conquered in Europe. And they continued their pursuit of some solution to this problem. They looked for places to send the Jews. Perhaps they could create some gigantic ghetto somewhere. They thought about the Lublin area as one of those solutions. That didn't work. Perhaps they could shove all the Jews into the Soviet Union, but that didn't work either. The Soviet Union was not going to receive millions of Jews simply because Germany wanted to get rid of them. By the end of 1942, the Germans had already murdered millions of Jews, but there were still remaining before them many Jews, more millions, all over Europe and North Africa, whom they wanted to capture and to bring to the murder centers in order to kill them. And they embarked on that mission during the course of 1943 and the subsequent years until the end of World War II, where the murder did not stop until the end of the war. Auschwitz, what became ultimately the largest and most industrialized murder center of the entire history, Auschwitz came online fully during the course of 1943. All of the gas chambers at Birkenau, the murder center of Auschwitz-Birkenau, were online by the summer of 1943 and were now prepared to kill all these arriving Jews. Jews from Greece, Jews from Italy, and the peak, the Jews from Hungary. In the course of the spring and summer of 1944, some 437,000 Jews from Hungary were brought to Auschwitz, and nearly all of them killed upon arrival in the period of just 8 weeks. Ultimately, Auschwitz murdered more than 1 million people, nearly all of them Jews. As the Red Army approached Auschwitz, the Germans shut down the murder operations at Auschwitz, and they marched out the majority of the remaining prisoners, some 57,000 approximately, in a death march through the snow without any provisions, shooting thousands on the way as they marched them towards Germany. And only a few thousand were remaining in the camp itself when the Soviets arrived on January 27th of 1945. So if we come to sum up the Holocaust, we can say that the Nazis achieved some of their goals, but they did not achieve all of their goals. They murdered 6 million Jews. The Jews have never replenished their numerical numbers. If before the war there were between 16 and 17 million Jews, at the end of World War II there were fewer than 11 million. And today, at the peak of Jewish growth since World War II, there are approximately 13 million Jews in the world. They seriously damaged aspects of Jewish culture in Ladino and Yiddish and other things. They wiped out Jewish communities that have never been reconstituted and have been essentially wiped off the map. In that sense, the Nazis achieved some of their goals, but the Nazis also failed because the Jewish people are still here. The Jewish people did not win World War II. The Jewish people survived World War II. But in that survival lies the Nazi failure.
הנה מה טוב ומה שבדאים גם יחד הנה מה טוב ומה נעים שבט אחים גם יחד הנה מה טוב הנה מה טוב, לי 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 precious oil flowing down the beard of Aaron. From the top of his head to the edge of his robe, Hine matov, Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, Hine matov, la 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 la. Hine matov, Hine matov, la 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 la. It's like the dew of Hermon descending upon the mountain of Zion. For there the Lord commanded blessing, life forevermore. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov, Hine matov, la 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 la. Hine matov, Hine matov, la 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la.
Thank you very much, CCC Chorale. We look forward to hearing other renditions of Hebrew songs later on in the this afternoon. Anyway, at this time, I'd like to invite Shelley Stevens up to do a reading from the prophet Joel.
I'm Shelley Stevens. I'm going to read Joel chapter 1 in Hebrew, and then I will read the English. Davar Adonai Asher Hadyam El Yoel ben Petuel. The word of the Lord that came to Joel, the son of Petuel. Hear this, ye O men, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Hath this been in your days, or in the days of your fathers? Tell ye your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce today's keynote speaker, Andy Réti. Andy is a childhood survivor of the Holocaust. There's a short bio piece in the program today you can read on your own if you wish. However, he's here to tell his story, and I'm not going to take any more of his time. So, Andy, the podium is all yours.
Thank you. Shalom, good afternoon, and thank you. Thank you for helping to honor my mother, and what an unbelievable occasion, her 6 million sisters and brothers. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I am considered a Holocaust educator, but I have never been to an incredible venue like this. I have never had the privilege of celebrating Yom HaShoah, Holocaust remembrance, together with such an incredible and wide-ranging audience. During those presentations, I am often asked many, many questions. One of them was courage, and you had just witnessed it. She just lost her husband. What an incredible, incredible courage it is. My presentation is called The Ring of Love. I am wearing that ring of love. Hopefully you'll have a chance to look at it, but if not, we do have a picture of it. This is an eyewitness to history, an artifact, a true survival of the atrocities. Now, as I mentioned, I have been doing this for over 20 years, and I cannot get over my incredible, incredible impression of you wonderful people who have been doing this for so many years together with the Jewish community. And I understand that previously you had some of the speakers that I consider to be my friends. That included Faye Libman, Ellie Gotts, and a lot of others. These survivors have one thing and one thing in common. In fact, every survivor has something in common. One is their incredible courage and will to survive and to live. And the other one is that they all talked about the constant hunger. My story is called The Ring of Love. And usually I present this to students and I ask a young student sitting in the front, what is the opposite to love? And of course the answer is hate. But Simon Wiesenthal said another definition, it is indifference. Think about it. Think about it. Love, hate, and indifference. These are all human emotions, and hopefully in the 28 minutes I have left, I'll be able to bridge them for you. My presentation usually is a bit longer than 30 minutes, but I'll try to do it. I had the privilege of working together with my mother for a number of years. I was her docent on a few occasions, which is in Latin for museum guide. Because similar to what you have outside here, we have an exhibit. And this is a portrait of her from a book of Holocaust survivor pictures. And this is what she wrote in her own handwriting. I was very bitter for many long years, but you can't live with hatred in your heart all the time. But to forgive, I can't. And I can't forget it either. The hurt deep in my heart will stay with me till the day I die. She died of very young, 88. She lived the way she died, with incredible courage and tenacity. She had defeated cancer once, and she only succumbed to it the second time. I held her hand. And I'll never forget it. Now, I did mention to you about some of the speakers on purpose, because I want to tell you, having listened to their stories, I came to my own conclusion that every Holocaust survivor story is a love story. Love of life, love of family, and love of freedom. And I will show this to you in the 27 minutes I have left. This is the ring, in case if you will not see it personally. And I'd like to draw your attention specifically to the necklace. The ring itself is on that necklace, And the necklace, and I'm sure all of you know this, is High. Het and Yud, the Hebrew letters forming High, meaning 18. And I'm going to show you the incredible number 18 throughout my presentation, which I didn't realize until I put the story together. Now, as a background, you had the video about 1939 and the Hungarian Jews. My parents got married in 1939, which was an incredible coincidence. And they were two ordinary young people living ordinary lives. They were really passionately and madly in love with each other. That custom at the time in most of Europe was that if you got married, you had used your wedding band as an engagement ring, but you put it on your right hand, and when you got married, you moved it to your left hand. Now, I forgot to tell you, forgive me, that the story you're about to hear is our story. Mostly my mother's, but mine as well, because I was there with her. And as hard as it seems to believe, I do have two personal recollections of the Holocaust, which I will share with you in a moment. And you forgive me for one more second, I forgot to bring my material. I was sitting on the left and this was on the right. So they got married in 1939. Yes, not this, just that. Thank you. Technical difficulties. And the wedding ring was used. As I said, it was the custom at the time. But even if they wanted to, they couldn't afford fancy diamond rings because they were really, really dirt poor. And my mother was an incredible woman, an extraordinary woman who was blessed with a number of abilities. She wrote a book titled An Ordinary Woman in Extraordinary Times, used at York University in Toronto for 10 years as text. I can tell you my incredible honor and privilege that while she was still alive, I was able to write a sequel to it called The Son of an Extraordinary Woman. And the greatest honor came in 2006, 11 years after she passed away, that the Israeli Foundation published the two books under the title Stronger Together. And it was titled such before Hillary appropriated it. So 1939, that is the beginning of our story. My mother was from the capital of a province of Baranya, which is Pécs, close to the Yugoslavian border. These are my maternal grandparents in 1942, the year I was born. And because Hungary at the time was an ally of Germany, the entire Jewish population of Hungary was intact. No major atrocities, no real atrocities and murders took place until spring and summer of 1944. And yet, between 1944 and 1945, proportionately, numerically, as the documentary mentioned, 450,000 Jews were murdered, which is more than the combined territories before them. They were so intent on murdering Jews that they actually used the moving stock, the rails, to take the Jews away to their death rather than supplying their own troops. So that was the year I was born, 1942. My grandparents did get to know me, but I never got to know them. My paternal grandparents, with whom I lived all my life until we left for Canada in 1956, were the other part of the family, and they did survive. But my mother's incredible courage, together with my grandmother's incredible courage, is the key here. Now, way before our Prime Minister declared himself to be a feminist, I've been telling my audience for years that I love women. Young, old, middle-aged. I'm in awe of women. I firmly believe that they are the stronger race. I firmly believe that they are more courageous than men. And you will see it in a few minutes. 25 minutes? Age 31, 5'10", second generation swimming instructor. The love of his life, 5'0", and the product of their love. Fat, blonde, blue-eyed. Something's changed, something didn't. So our story begins, in reality, in a small village of Recknitz, Austria, which is in Austria today. But over the years, the borders in Europe shifted so many times and so often. At one time it was part of Hungary called Rohonc, and at another time it was Recknitz. I never got to go there until 2016, when the launching of my book gave me one last concentrated effort to look for a childhood friend. I went with my lovely wife Judy, with whom I have been together for 18 years, and she's here somewhere. I haven't seen her yet. Oh, thank you. So we went there, and you see Judy and I in front of a brick wall. This brick wall was a brick factory, very similar to where we were back in Hungary. Now, the reason I say that our story started in Recknitz, because I was born as Recknitzer András. Recknitz is the village, Recknitzer is the villager, and the name was changed only after liberation, not to sound so Jewish, not to sound so easily identifiable. Of course, it didn't help. Because in 1956, when we left Hungary, we already had graffiti on the wall. Itzig, nem kell menni Auschwitzig. Jews, you don't have to go to Auschwitz. We'll take care of you right here, right now. 1956, 11 years after the Holocaust. Now, the rabbi just talked about hate. He mentioned that there are people who want us to hate each other. No, no, no. Not only because we are in a special house of God, not only because we are men and women of goodwill, but because that is our humanity. I'm not a particularly religious person. In fact, I was so anti-religious because of my grandfather that I didn't have my grandfather present at my bar mitzvah, which is the greatest event in a Jewish boy's life. I'll come to that too. I know we're running out of time. He was a communist, and he didn't show up to his grandson's bar mitzvah. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not particularly religious, but I do believe in a supreme being above us. I do believe that the greatest gift from God is our ability to choose. We can choose to do evil, or we can choose to do the right thing. Now, I had a little bit of a time to talked to some of the leadership, including Pastor Jack, and I said that in all my presentations, I include the fact that if you leave today and you forget everything you heard, but just remember one thing and one thing only, you have learned something. And that one thing is the fact that it happened because good people stood by. It happens because people step back instead of step up. You can be a bystander or you can be an upstander. Now, I mentioned the previous speakers. Another common denominator was that all of us, survivors, without fail, had survived because of the act of kindness of at least one stranger, sometimes on multiple occasions, sometimes more than one stranger. Our story is no exception. So even though it goes back,
we had to go out front of the house and form a line, 5 of us. And as I said, I just grabbed the knapsack, which there are a little tea or crackers or apple and things for the baby. And I grabbed one blanket and we went out. At that time, my father-in-law was still home. On the street, if I was not there, I would not believe what the people did to us. All those people from the neighboring house, the hairdresser whom I went every 2 weeks, they all lined up on the sidewalk. They were happy, they were spot on us, they said ugly words, they grabbed anything they could. One smashed my father-in-law's eyeglasses, the other took off a coat from a man's shoulder, the other one grabbed out the blanket from my hand. And there is only one voice among the thousands and thousands of onlookers who said, "Can't you see this is for a baby? Give it back." But of course, I was not allowed to even look back, not to wait for the blanket. And I was wondering, who could be that one person who spoke up?
One person who spoke up. Now again, forgive me a little bit because we're a bit out of sync here. Because what I didn't tell you was that October 15, 1944, there was an announcement by the regent of Hungary that we are not going to be fighting with the Germans. Remember, Hungary was an ally. This happiness lasted for 1 day because the following day he was pushed out of power. On October 16, the Hungarian Nazi Party, the Aerocross Party, took power. And that is when our Shoah, our Holocaust, started. By that time, both my father and grandfather were taken away to a forced labor battalion of the Hungarian army. They were not allowed to carry weapons. They were only allowed to wear partial uniforms, and they were made to do menial tasks, digging ditches, kitchen duty, etc., but no weapons. So there were only the 3 of us back home, and this was the apartment that we lived in. No? Oops. Okay. If those of you who have been to Europe, you can imagine it, or you have seen it. The courtyard is open, it's an open atrium, and all the apartment buildings go around it. So our apartment was the very first one that if you came into the building. So we had a knock on the door, and we were given 5 minutes to pack up. Only thing take with you that you can carry. And this is when my mother's incredible prescience and foresight came in. She had to carry the baby, me, and she asked my grandmother, no matter what happens, to follow us. Now you can imagine, because it's human nature, to live in a neighborhood that you're comfortable with. We lived in the heart of the Jewish neighborhood. Every apartment building had a majority of Jewish population, up to 70-75%. So we were rounded up, and in no time at all, hundreds, thousands of people were made to march down the street. In about 20 minutes, a procession was halted. An order was given that every piece of valuable that you had to be handed over. It was a blanket on the ground. My mother was so in love with this wonderful man that you had just seen, that at the risk of her life and my life, decided not to hand over her ring. And usually I look at young people, so I'm going to choose a very young lady. Where would you hide that ring if you had a baby in your hand and you were to hide it?
Maybe in his diaper.
You read my book. That's exactly where the ring was hidden, in the diaper. Now, in a lot of customs, in a lot of folklore, a lot of custom, it is said that if you touch poo-poo, caca, manure, it brings you good luck. So I'm going to show you that this ring had brought us its share of good luck. But indeed, that's what happened. We were robbed. And then, after we were robbed, we were forced to go on, and we had no idea where. The weather in Hungary is very similar to what we have here in Canada. And October is damp, rainy, miserable. We were taken to an open-air racetrack, and thousands of people were made to fill the open-air infield. No food, no water, no facilities. This was on October 16. We were there October 17, October 18, 3 o'clock in the morning, the light comes on, and the announcement says, you can go home. But before we got that far, one of the many miracles happened. One of the many miracles that shows that humanity can be found anywhere and everywhere. Now, I'm particularly pleased that the chief of police is here, because I had the privilege of talking to some police officers over the years, and I make sure that we understand that a policeman has a duty to obey orders, but the policeman also has a duty to be a human being. So my grandmother recognized a young policeman from her hometown, and she walked over to him, and she begged him to help. This officer could easily have said, I don't know you, get back in the line, I want nothing to do with you. But this police officer was a human being first. And he said, you see that group over there? Make sure you don't get mixed up with them, because they'll be taken to Auschwitz. And by that time we knew what Auschwitz was. So we avoided the first selection. And we made it to October 18, 3 o'clock in the morning. As we are leaving with our backs turned, people on either side of us were murdered because they had a machine gun. But somehow we managed to stay alive. So what happens? Well, we go home. Our freedom was only 2 days when we were rounded up again. Excuse me. The same process. We rounded up and taken this time to a brick factory where we are separated, and after that we're taken to the ghetto of Budapest. Now, in every country there were many ghettos, including Budapest. There were a number of different homes that were designated as ghettos. We were taken to number 9 Acacia Street. What's half of 18? 9. We're still alive. We're okay. We happened to be taken to an apartment building identical to where we lived, designed for 300 people. Well over 2,000 were crowded in there. We were assigned a 2-room apartment. That's 2 rooms only. The facilities were down the hallway, common washroom. And we had 27 people crowded into this small space. Out of the 27, 7 were children, all under the age of 7. My mother was together with her best friend and the 2 mothers. I only found out recently that actually her husband and my father were together in the same labor battalion. But her best friend had a little baby who's 6 months older than I was. And we were in the ghetto together. Now, I mentioned to you that I have 2 personal recollections. And one of them is that my little friend Katie was with me because the 2 mothers were able to commandeer a fold-out Chesterfield. The 2 mothers were on the outside. The 2 babies were between the 2 mothers, touching feet to feet. And my little friend Katie had the coldest feet in the universe. I remember it. My dear wife has a cold feet. And to this day, if she even comes near me, I jump. Human nature, it's in me. And she loves putting her cold feet against me. So this is my first recollection of the ghetto. The other one is sadly also missing, but when we get lemons, we make lemonade. We can go back? I have a feeling that it's missing altogether. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Okay, thank you. I felt it. Oh, okay, it's there. Sorry, thank you. Okay, there is my little friend Katie. And we lost touch with each other, but in 2016, I went back, one last attempt to find her, and lo and behold, I find her. She's still curly-haired, blonde, and blue-eyed. And I got to tell you, because I say this to every audience, our revenge on the Nazis is that we became grandfathers and grandmothers. So when I went back to meet my long-lost childhood friend, from then on, 2016, every email and every Skype messages, this is your cold-footed friend here. But that is what happened. So the other memory is of our liberation. Would anybody like to guess on what day in January we were liberated? January 18. And this is my recollection. But it is written with my mother's own words. So I'm going to read it to you because, forgive me, my memory is not even close to as what my mother's is. She wrote a poem called Hunger, but she wrote it about me. Mommy, please give me a little piece of bread. I am hungry, very hungry. Just this little, Mommy. My 2-year-old puts his 2 tiny fingers together, showing me just how little he wanted. Tomorrow, my son, tomorrow, maybe the war will be over and you will have all the bread you want. Hush, hush, little one, go to sleep. Don't cry. Mommy will hold you and sing you a lullaby. The next day comes and goes, but no food, only hopes. Hopes that tomorrow we could be free. The following morning, indeed, we hear noises, different voices. We all rush to the courtyard, and there he is, a Russian soldier who just liberated us. I beg him with sign language, with tears running down my cheek, please give me some bread. My baby is starving to death. The soldier reaches into his pocket and puts a roll in my hand. As I give it to my child, he looks at it with wide, unbelieving eyes, then laughing and crying and jumping with joy, he bites into the beautiful white roll. It was dark. I remember it. Russians do not have white bread. They had Russian bread, black rye bread. So I remember it. So January 18, we're liberated. Now, because I'm trying to make the 30-minute deadline, I didn't tell you a very important date. December 25, 1944. The day that my grandfather, who was able to escape from his labor battalion, found us. He found his way into the ghetto, which was a great relief to all of us, causing one problem, one more mouth to feed. So on January 18, 1945, we were lucky. We were lucky that we were liberated by the Russians, because on that day, my grandfather fainted from hunger, and because the Russians knew how to treat people with starvation, they were able to revive him. I have a first cousin who survived Bergen-Belsen, 18 years of age, and he perished because the Americans did not know how to handle people with starvation. Their starving stomachs could not handle it. So he gorged himself on food and he passed away. But we were saved by the Russians. So you have to understand that the Russians who came and forced a communist system on us were not my enemies. I had no ill feelings towards the Russians. They saved us. But life goes on. This is on my 3rd birthday, just after liberation. And this is a year after, in 1946, and you can still see that we're all skin and bones. But life goes on. What happens? If you noticed, there is one person missing from that picture. The center of our universe. The husband, the father, the son. He did not survive. I was told all my life that he died of typhus. And if you can recall that picture of this beautiful man, age 31, 5'10", in the prime of his life, I just could not relate to the fact that he would succumb to such an ugly disease as typhus. But our life goes on. I lived with my grandparents from the moment I was born. We were lucky that we were able to continue living with them after the war. And I was already groomed to be a swimmer. I had hopes of becoming an Olympic swimmer. At age 14, the year we left Hungary, I in fact did win a national championship for my age group in both individual and relay. And before you ask me which one am I, the best looking one. So 1956, the year the Hungarian October Revolution starts, we escape the communist paradise, and my mother and I make our way to Canada, who welcomed us with open arms. Our first visit back to my father's grave was in 1974. It's only a marker because there are no human remains there. In Jewish tradition, if a person dies, they have to be buried within 24 hours. and within 1 year a monument or a stone or a marker has to be erected. We have no idea where his remains are. We have no idea where he was murdered. However, I mentioned at the beginning that I'm going to show you the human emotion. The entrance to the cemetery says, hatred had killed them. May love cherish their memory. There it is, those two incredible emotions. This is in 2016 when I went back with my lovely wife. And this is the entrance to his section where it says, Akfalba, 820 known, 224 unknown. This is where they are memorialized. Now, I mentioned at the beginning about the bar mitzvah being a very important milestone in a Jewish boy's life. For those of you who don't know, bar mitzvah literally means son of the covenant. At age 13, a boy is allowed to recite from the sacred Torah, and it is a huge family celebration. When we came to Canada in 1957, my mother married a fellow survivor and married him in 1958, who became our wonderful Papa Emil. My 2 children did not know any other grandfathers because sadly, my dear wife's father, also a survivor, passed away at age 63 during the horrors that he had suffered. But he was a partisan. He fought against the Nazis. He was very proud of that, and we were very proud of him. This is at my son's bar mitzvah. So you can imagine what an incredible day this is. And you see me on the back, and the person standing next to me was a first cousin to my father, who was together with him. And this is the first time I met him because he came all the way from Israel for this really special occasion. So during that lull in the ceremony, I asked him, Cousin Harry, I understand you were together with my father. How is it that you survived and he did not? And I was told all my life that he died of typhus. He looked me in the eye and he said, you are right. He did not die of typhus. So what happened? What happened was that they could hear the approaching gunfight, and Harry asked my father to escape with him. And my father said, Harry, you don't have a family. If we get caught, we'll be shot. I have Ibi and Andy waiting for me. I can't take a chance. I can't tell you the emotional shock to find out on my son's bar mitzvah that my father died because he loved. How different our lives could have been had he lived, had he survived. I am sure he had the courage to escape. But he didn't want to escape. He didn't want to risk his family. He sacrificed for his family. This took me a long, long time to understand and to process. One of the reasons I do what I do is to make sure that this kind of blind hatred will not occur again. This is the reason my generation swore never again. So I can't tell you the emotional shock that I am experiencing every time I hear of these hate crimes, of these atrocities. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that I'm not a particularly religious person, but I do believe in the supremacy of the God above us. During my over 20 years, I heard many questions, and one of them is, where was God during the Holocaust? And the answer is not the question, what the answer is. Where was man during the Holocaust? So for me, what I'm doing, it's getting a little bit more difficult year after year, but I hope to do it for a few more years, along with another undertaking. Now, this is the picture that got back to us. It was found in his wallet. We have no idea how it got back to us. So you can imagine my extreme pleasure that the publishers chose to put that on the picture of the book. But not too many people can make this statement. I am a biker because of my mother and the Holocaust. In fact, I haven't come across anybody who's a biker because of their mother and the Holocaust. How am I now? This always gets the kids going, at least their attention. I'm a biker because of my mother and the Holocaust and her incredible pedagogy and motherly instinct. This is a birthday gift for my 8th birthday. But on my 6th birthday, she allowed me to go on a full-size motorcycle in a small amusement park. Now, usually she has an incredible, incredible memory, and she did not remember that she allowed me to go on a motorcycle. So you can imagine, when at age 60, as an engagement gift to my bride-to-be, I bought a brand new motorcycle. So when she found out that I bought a motorcycle, she goes like this. 2 minutes. When she comes up, she says, how can you do such a bad thing to me? I said, I'm not dead yet. But I did buy a motorcycle. My lovely bride rode with me for 5 years. Until I put her in the ditch once too often. But nevertheless, this is where the ring of love comes in. In 2005, which was the year my dear mother passed away, I joined a Jewish motorcycle club, Yaus, Yidden on Wheels. And we had our first ever Ride to Remember. And the caption says, we ride to remember so that world will not forget. When I had the horrible task of cleaning out my mother's apartment, I came across the necklace with the ring on it, and I decided to make her into a showpiece that I only wear on Holocaust education presentations, weddings, bar mitzvahs, and sadly, lately, more and more funerals. And because it's a large ring, it did not fit under the glove. So I had no choice but to put it inside my vest. And there is a saying that there are only 2 kinds of motorcycle riders. One who's already gone down and kissed the ground, and one who's about to. Well, let me tell you, when you hit the ditch at 60, something happens. Either you or the bike or both, but not this time, because I had the ring of love next to my heart. Now, would you all please stand up for a minute? The Right to Remember started in 2005. And in 2017, we went to New York City, and I have this plaque on my bike at every Right to Remember, which is a copy of the portrait that my mother has at Toronto's Holocaust Center. We also had a fully ordained rabbi. This Hillel's angel looking dude is a fully ordained rabbi. That is a Torah on his motorcycle that was smuggled out of Germany, but because it's not kosher, it's not being able to be used in services, but it's an artifact. In 2012, I had the honor of reciting the pledge on the hills of Parliament, and I'd like you to repeat it with me. It's called the pledge. My name is Andy Réti, a young child Holocaust survivor and a member of the Young Motorcycle Club of Toronto. Less than 70 years ago, the world of 6 million Jewish people, including my own father, came to an end that is so evil that the only word that can describe it is Holocaust. I stand before you as a witness and a free man to tell all, never again. Never again to any and all genocides. Never again to racial hatred. Never again to a second Holocaust. Please take this pledge with me. We pledge to speak up against hatred and racism. We pledge to remember. Please put your hand over your heart and say, we pledge never again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. When I introduced you, I said that it's your time to tell your story, and you did a magnificent job. You're one of the best storytellers that I've heard personally. I think everyone else will agree with me. It was a wonderful story. Thank you so much for sharing. At this time, I'd like to invite Pam Phillips to do a rendition of Ailey Ailey.
Can't tell you how amazing it is to me that Hannah Senesh, the woman who wrote this poem, looks like 2 drops of water, like a twin sister to Andy's mother. Unbelievable. Go to any Holocaust encyclopedia, go to any source you can find online. Hannah Senesh is exactly like Andy's mother. It's unbelievable. And I talking from the heart. I wrote down to myself a few notes this morning about Hannah Senesh writing this song. In the Encyclopedia of the Holocaust, on page 1447, 1448, she is called a Palestinian Jew. That shocked me. What kind of thing is this? Palestinian Jew? But the land at that time was called Palestine, and she didn't care what people called her. She had this amazing idea that Eli, Eli, my God, may it never again happen the bad things. May it always happen only the good things. The sound of the sea, the sand, the prayer of man. That is the message that Hannah Senesh left with us. And last but not least, I'm not sure what the source is, but apparently she told her friends that even if she is caught and can't rescue even one Jew, she hopes that her sacrifice will be a symbol of the resilience, a symbol of resistance. Never again.
Eli, Eli, שלא ייגמר לעולם, החור והים, ריש רוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת הרם, החור והים, ריש רוש של המים. Eli, Eli, שלא ייגמר אלוהים, החור והים, ריש רוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת הרם, החור והים, ריש רוש של המים, ברק השמיים, תפילת הרם.
Thank you very much, Pam. Next part of our memorial service entails lighting one of, well, 6 candles, each representing the 6 million Jews that died in the Holocaust. There are various individuals, as your program says, will be called up one at a time in no specific order. So listen for your name to be called. And what I will do is light one of these candles, which you can use to light your candle. If you wish to come up and say something, that's fine. If you just want to light the candle, that's also fine. Again, it's up to you. So just bear with me for a second while I light the candle. I'd like to invite Andy to come up and light the first candle, please.
At the beginning, I thanked all of you for honoring my mother and 6 million brothers and sisters. But at the end, I want to remind all of you, never again. And thank you for taking that pledge with me.
Next person I'm going to call upon is Raymond Woodward. Yeah. Raymond Wood Sr. Raymond is going to light one of the candles on behalf of the righteous Gentiles who helped the Jews during the Holocaust. I'd like to call upon Sidel Grove to light the third candle.
The Nazis and their collaborators killed upwards of 1.5 million to 2 million children. Approximately 1.5 million children were Jews, but there were other children as well. Children from other ethnicities, from other countries, children killed in political reprisals. Czechoslovakia, the Soviet Union, Poland, France. Romani children, thousands of Romani children, and children who were confined to institutions for the mentally and physically for the mentally and physically deficient in institutions throughout Nazi-occupied Europe. And so I light this candle and I dedicate it to these children, and with reflection on the vast number of their progeny who were never born. I am pleased to light this candle.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask Dave Besner to come up and light the fourth candle, and Dave will be lighting this as a representative of the Canadian servicemen and women who lost their lives in the war.
I light this candle to honor the many Canadian women and men who served in the fight against the Nazi terror.
Thanks, Dave. Go ahead and invite Pam Phillips from the Capital Community Church to come up and light the fifth candle, please. The sixth candle, I'd like to invite Lou Budovich, who's a member of our Jewish community. Lou?
I light this candle for all the people lost in the Holocaust.
Okay, thank you. Okay. There's one candle left. It's not part of the six, nor is it the shamas, but this is a special one reserved for the children of the future. And for this candle, I'd like to invite Clara Hennessy to come up and light a candle. Met her before. She's very excited about doing this. Okay, Rabbi, did you want to come up and say something about the next piece being presented by the chorale?
The next two songs are basically the idea that, first of all, the only true prophets are the ones who give hope. It's so easy for us to say apocalyptic now. You know, the river is flooding, there's so much hatred, everybody's killing everybody. It's very easy to say, oh, the world is doomed, it's going to a miserable end, and that's it. But the true prophets are those who actually prophesy hope. Those who actually prophesy never again. Those who actually say, yes, it does look horrible outside, but it's just a speed bump. It's just to slow us down to reflect on what we can do to make this world a better place. The words of the Reformed Jewish movement is Tikkun Olam. Let us make this world a tiny bit better than it was when we came into this world. Ani Ma'amin was not written by a prophet. It was written by Maimonides close to 1,000 years ago. He was the doctor, the official doctor for the Egyptian king until he made Aliyah, until he ascended to the land of Israel, which was at that time very desolate, and nobody could see the hope, nobody could see the growth, nobody could see that there will be a day when life will be thriving. The largest Jewish community in the world is now living in Israel, including my 3 children, my 37 nephews and nieces, my great niece, which I am, can't believe I'm that old. My grandmother is 93, she celebrated last week. She now has 57 grandchildren, 50. It's hard to count. Sorry. Ani Ma'amin means I believe. I believe with complete faith that the Messiah will come. And even though, like I said, we have a lot of speed bumps, that's all they are. We should not turn them into mountains. We should not say we can't do this. Last but not least, Hashivenu was written by probably the most miserable seen or read prophet of all times, Jeremiah. Jeremiah wasn't a bullfrog, as the song says. Maybe he is, but I don't. But Jeremiah was always upset, always saying, why did you make me do this? Why did you tell me to tell the people that the temple will be destroyed, that their wives will be raped, that their children will be enslaved in other nations? Why did you make me do this? I want to give them the message of hope. I want to give them good words, words that they couldn't hear anywhere else. And so God gave him the gift of writing the book of Lamentations, where he says, please make the last verse, this one of hope. Hashivenu Hashem alecha v'nashuva. Return us to you, and we shall return. You have to make the first step, because we are so desperate, we are so weak, we are so tired of all of these problems. And we want you to please make that first step, because we can't pull ourselves out of this swamp anymore. We have to have you reach out. And so God says, yes, that is the true message. And that is why we believe that the Messiah will come speedily in our days. Amen.
We
Okay, at this time, I'd like to invite Imbal Lev and Matthew Woodward to do Psalm 23. Read it.
מזמור לדוד, אדוני רואי לא אחסר, בנאות דשא ירבצני, על מי מנוחות ינעלני. נפשי ישובב, יניחי במעגלי צדק למען שמו. גם כי אלך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא רע, כי אתה עמדי. שבטך ומשענותיך המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, תשענת בשמן ראשי כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים.
A Psalm of David. Hashem is my shepherd, I shall not lack. In lush meadows he lays me down, beside tranquil waters he leads me. He restores my soul. He leads me on the paths of justice for his name's sake. Though I walk in the valley overshadowed by death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in view of my tormentors. You anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Hashem for long days.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, I'd now like to ask Rabbi Goldman to come up and recite the Keil Eli Rachamim Memorial Prayer, and he will be followed by Dr. Israel Unger, who will recite the Mourner's Kaddish Prayer.
El Malach literally means God full of mercy. We say this prayer at the gravesite, during funerals, and 4 times a year when we recite the prayer in memory of all the souls of our community who passed away. This specific version was written after the Holocaust by a few rabbis who were inspired to just express their hope and love to all the people who were murdered. And since many of them, we don't even know when they passed away, it's most appropriate that we say this prayer, not condemning those who did it, but rather saying Hashem will for sure take them right into heaven, into His loving and embracing arms. אל מלא רחמים, דיין אלמנות אבי יתומים, אל נא תחשב ותתאפק, לדם ישראל שנשפך כמים, המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר קים מזהירים ומאירים, לנשמותיהם של רבבות אלפי ישראל, אנשים, נשים, ילדים וילדות, שנהרגו ונשחטו ושנשרפו חיים, ושנקברו חיים על ידי הצוררים הגרמנים יימח שמם וזכרם ועוזריהם. כולם קדושים וטהורים, בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם. לכן ברך נשאו ספר לעולמים, ויצרו צורכים את שמותיהם, אדוני נחתם, וינוחו בשלום משכבותיהם, ונאמר אמן.
The mourner's Kaddish is one of the central and most frequently recited prayers in the Jewish liturgy. Its origins date to about 2,500 years ago. Interestingly, the Kaddish is in Aramaic, not in Hebrew. And while it unambiguously denotes mourning, there is no mention of death or the deceased. In the prayer, the Kaddish is a magnification and sanctification of God's name and was inspired by Ezekiel's vision of God becoming great in the eyes of all nations. Initially, during the mourning period of a rabbi or teacher, students would gather to study in his honor, and his son would recite the prayer. Over time, the custom extended to all mourners. The Kaddish is recited by a mourner following the death of a close relative for 11 months, and then each year on the anniversary of the death. Should there be no relative, then any adult can recite the prayer. The Kaddish is considered one of the most important obligations one has to the deceased. My father was a young teenager during the First World War, and the Austrian and Russian armies faced each other very close to the town that he lived in. And he told me many times that if a Jewish soldier in the Austrian army was killed, or if a Jewish soldier in the Russian army was killed, a truce would be called, and the Jewish soldiers from each army would gather together and recite the Kaddish. After the Holocaust, my father picked the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, as the anniversary date to recite Kaddish for all of his relatives and my mother's relatives murdered by the Nazis. Most of the 6 million Jews who were murdered in the Holocaust had no one to say Kaddish for them. So it is appropriate for us to now recite the Kaddish for them. I will recite it in Hebrew first, and then please join me and let us all recite it in English. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbi, v'yalme divrei chutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'hayechain v'yoymechain v'haye dechol Beit Yisrael, v'gola v'zman kuriv v'imru Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbi mevorach le'olam v'olmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpuar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithalel v'yithalal. Shemei de kidsha bericha le'elu min kol b'chata v'shirata tishbachata v'nechemata. Damiram b'olmu v'imru Amen. Yehei shlom rabba min shemayim v'haim uleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. Oisei shalom b'imromav hu yaseh shalom uleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen. The Jewish tradition is that when the Kaddish is recited, we stand. May his great name grow exalted and sanctified in the world that he created as he willed. May he give rain to his kinship in your lifetimes and in your days, and in the lifetimes of the entire family of Israel, swiftly and soon. And say Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and ever. Blessed, praised, glorified, exalted, extolled, mighty, upraised, and lauded be the name of the Holy One. Blessed is he beyond any blessing and song, praise and consolation that are uttered in the world. And say Amen. He who makes peace in his heights, may he make peace upon us, upon all Israel, and upon all people. And say Amen.
Okay, at this point, we'd like to have the Triple C Chorale come out for their final presentation for the afternoon, the singing of Hashivenu.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai, Elecha, Vena, Shuva, Elecha, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yamenu kekedem. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai, Elecha, Hashivenu, Shuva, Yamenu kekedem.
I'd like to invite Rabbi Goldman and Pastor Lehman to come forward and offer the Misha Breach prayer.
מי שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, הוא יברך את כל הקהל הקדוש הזה עם כל קהילות הקודש, הם ונשיהם ובני ובנותיהם בכל אשר להם, ומי שמייחדים את הכנסיות לתפילה, ומי שבאים מתוכם להתפלל, ומי שנותנים לו ואין לקידוש להבדלה, ופת לאורחים וצדקה לעניים, וכל מי שעוסקים בצורכי ציבור באמונה, הקדוש ברוך הוא ישלם שכרם, ויסיר מהם כל מחלה, וירפא לכל גופם ויסלח לכל עוונם, וישלח בך צרח ומעשה אדם, עם כל ישראל לכם, ונאמר אמן.
Thank you, Rabbi. May he who blessed our forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Bless every holy congregation, the men, women, sons, daughters, and all that is theirs. May he bless those who dedicate houses of worship for prayer and those who enter them to pray, those who give lamps of illumination, wine for Kiddush and Havdalah, bread for guests, charity for the poor, and all who faithfully work for the needs of the community. May the Almighty reward them and remove from them all afflictions. May he heal their bodies, forgive their mistakes, and send them blessing and success for their every endeavor, along with the entire community of people. Amen.
All right, to conclude this afternoon's memorial service, I'd like to invite Pastor Raymond Woodward to make some closing remarks.
What a wonderful afternoon this has been. It was King Solomon who said, "It is better for us to go into the house of mourning than the house of feasting." Many times it's the serious and solemn things that instruct us the most in living, in life, and in love. And on behalf of our particular church family, and I don't often do this, our Christian community is quite diverse like the Jewish community, and so I don't often presume to speak on behalf of the entire Christian community. But I would for a moment and say to all of our Jewish friends, you have honored us with your presence today and allowing us to partner with you in this event. We are forever very, very grateful. Now, I would presume to speak to the Christian community that is present here today, both from our congregation and other congregations who have joined us. We believe as Christians that what we do should be based on the Scripture. And in Genesis chapter 12 and verse 3, God spoke to Abraham and said, "I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee, and in thee shall all nations of the earth be blessed." God has promised, and we believe that those who bless the nation of Israel, God blesses that person or that nation. We owe an eternal debt of gratitude to the wonderful Jewish people, not only for all the contributions in science and medicine and in other facets of society, not only for those great things, but as Christians, we need to remember that the nation of Israel actually gave birth to the Christian faith. It was a rabbi from Nazareth that you might have heard of who once said, Jesus said, "Salvation is of the Jews." The Jewish people gave us the Holy Scripture. They gave us the prophets and the patriarchs. For all of you Christians that are gathered, Mary and Joseph and Jesus Christ of Nazareth, they were Jewish people. The 12 disciples, what we call the 12 apostles, Jewish people. It is not possible to say, I am a Christian, and not love the Jewish people. We stand united. We stand together. Jesus considered the Jewish people his family. He said, "Inasmuch as you have done it unto the least of these, my brethren," the Jewish people, "you have done it unto me." And finally, in Psalm chapter 122 and verse 6, the Bible instructs all of us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. We stand here today united in our support of our local Jewish community, of the Atlantic Jewish community, and of our brothers and sisters in the Jewish faith all around the world, and particularly in Israel. We support Israel because all other nations were created by an act of men, but Israel was created by an act of God. We stand united, we stand in solidarity, and we stand as one. I have a couple of housekeeping things and then we'll be dismissed. First of all, there is a wonderful reception that has been prepared immediately outside. You just go out into the lobby on your way through, and if you can hang out and visit and make some new friends and meet some new friends, what a wonderful end to an already wonderful afternoon that would be. For all of you men that are here, if you would remember to leave your yarmulke in the collection bins that are out there, that would help our city from being shocked that suddenly the Jewish community has multiplied. Although that wouldn't be a bad thing, but just so you remember. Everyone who has participated in this service, we thank you for that. Folks, it is a special honor to have his worship, Mayor Mike O'Brien, with us. Would you stand, Mayor O'Brien? Thank you for making this a priority in your schedule and in your heart. And our Chief of Police, Leanne Fitch, would you stand? We are so grateful that you are here. I told her in the office before service, and I intended to say it publicly because I've not had the chance other than to our local congregation. This lady who serves our city and serves our police force, she made all of us proud in the way she handled the massive tragedy we have experienced since we were gathered together for this event, and in the way she conducted herself and oversaw those tragic funerals. It was magnificent. We thank you for that. We thank you for your service to our city. Of course, our dear friend, Dr. Israel Unger, who was the initial phone call that started this wonderful partnership a few years back. We're so grateful to have you here. Rabbi Goldman, always a pleasure and an honor to have you in our building, and to do this event with you is a true delight. And my new friend, Andy, who I had the privilege of sitting beside this afternoon. What an incredible story you told us today. All the more meaningful because it's so meaningful to you. Thank you for being here. Remain standing, that would be fine. And we don't usually get this personal, but to the lady with the cold feet, I didn't see who he pointed out. There you are. Judy, what an honor to have you with us, you and your husband. Thank you for being here today. We honor you. Thank you so much. And so in conclusion, we would just say one word, a beautiful word, a powerful word. We often think that it means peace. It means more than that, actually. It actually has a significance of wholeness. Would you turn to your neighbor and say, Shalom? It's a hello, it's a goodbye, it's kind of a blessing, it's a greeting. Thank you for being with us today. Please stick around, enjoy some food, enjoy our reception, and meet some wonderful new friends. What a blessing it has been to be here today. God bless you all.